Starting off our list at our number 10 spot, we have the beginning. Let's start at the beginning of when we began to speculate that there may be life on Mars. If you didn't know, Mars has polar ice caps, and those were first discovered in the 17th century. In the late 18th century, a scientist named William Herschel proved that the ice caps grew and shrunk, but were alternating based on the summer and winter each hemisphere was in. From there, astronomers began to realize all of the other similarities that Mars has to Earth, such as a very similar length of day, a similar axial tilt, and the fact that Mars was clearly experiencing seasons, albeit twice the length of Earth's. This all led scientists to speculate that there may be alien life living on the planet because it has all of these similarities to our incredibly hospitable Earth. Maybe Mars would be equally as great of a host for life. Way back then, it was theorized that there may possibly be advanced alien life, which we now know is not the case, but that doesn't mean that there is no alien life at all, or that life on Mars never existed. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Viking 1. We can now move along to the first lander on Mars, which occurred in 1976 and was NASA's Viking 1 lander. This was a huge step in the process of exploring and searching for life on Mars, and it all started with the search for water, specifically liquid water. Water has been found on other planets in our solar system, but it is not normally found in liquid form due to the extreme environments and atmospheres that exist in space and on other planets. The Viking 1 was able to give us pretty solid evidence that led scientists to believe that there had once been liquid water on Mars, and it seemed as though it had rained. While Mars certainly isn't currently a planet that would be hospitable to human life, what the Viking 1 gave researchers was evidence that the planet probably once was very hospitable for life, and the rain would mean that the planet once had a thicker atmosphere, which means that while it may not be currently holding life, there is the possibility that it once was, and may even still in the smallest, earliest way. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Martian elements. Another thing that the Viking 1 was able to prove to scientists, other than the existence of the ancient riverbeds and the evidence of vast flooding, was that the planet held all of the elements that are essential for us to live here on Earth. These elements are the ones like carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus, just to name a few. This is of course a huge step because discoveries like these give scientists the ability to decide on what the next steps would be in the search for life. After this discovery, the Viking landers were able to perform some experiments on the Martian soil, which did end up leading to some controversial results. The soil sample did test positive for metabolism, which most definitely could be a positive sign of some sort of microorganism life, but there are also other reasons which could be responsible for this positive test. While it would be nice to just jump to the conclusion that we've successfully found life on Mars, it is imperative that our scientists remain skeptical and don't take this one experiment as a sure sign. In our number 7 spot today, we have ALH 84001. On December 27th, 1984, a piece of Mars was actually found on Earth. This meteorite was found in the Allen Hills in Antarctica, and it is believed that it started off on Mars, of course, and was thought to have crystallized from molten rock around 4 billion years ago. Scientists believe that it came barreling to Earth after an ancient collision, only to be found by some American meteor hunters. The rock was named ALH 84001, and it weighed around 4 pounds, and of course testing was done on it immediately because this is believed to be the oldest Martian rock we have ever found on Earth. In 1996, while scientists were looking into the rock, they found structures in the meteorite that seemed similar to what would be formed by microbes, as well as the presence of organic materials. There have, like many other potential signs of life on Mars, been scientists who have come up with other possible explanations for the structures that were found, and there are some scientists who believe that the organic material came from contamination with Earth materials, but truthfully, either theory could be correct. In our number 6 spot today, we have Curiosity. Now we are back on Mars with the Curiosity rover and its major discovery. While we already talked about the discovery of the traces of sulfur, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and carbon, Curiosity found the presence of minerals like sulfates and sulfides. This was an important discovery because it means that if life once existed, these minerals could have been utilized by the ancient microbes that may have once, or possibly do still exist. This discovery led scientists to hypothesize that if there were primitive microbes, they may have found the minerals as a source of sufficient energy by feeding on the Martian rocks. These minerals also showed that when there was liquid water on Mars, the chemical composition of it would have been fine for us as humans to drink, which is another important factor when determining how hospitable a planet is. In our number 5 spot today we have Martian cauliflower. We are now getting closer to where we are at in our current search for life on Mars, but we're still a few years behind with a discovery made by the Spirit rover in 2008. As Spirit was searching the red planet, it found a strange shape that was sticking out of the Gusev crater. This weird little shaped thing was nicknamed cauliflower because of its strange shape and appearance, but of course it isn't even close to being actual cauliflower. Images were of course taken of this, which showed that it contained a series of mineral deposits made up of opaline silica. This was super important because on Earth, these kinds of silica deposits are often in association with microbial activity. The skepticism with this one comes because of how different Mars' current atmosphere is from Earth's, so we have to understand that this could have been caused by something as simple as wind erosion, which is a non-biological process. But just because we have to remain skeptical and question all angles doesn't mean that this doesn't point to signs of Martian bacteria. In our number 4 spot today we have Mars past. Before we get into the most recent discoveries, just to do our due diligence, we should definitely talk about the history of Mars because, like we've talked about a bit already today, in its current state it most definitely doesn't seem like a place where life could thrive. Currently Mars is cold and dry and can reach temperatures of minus 140 degrees Celsius, which even as a Canadian I can admit is a little too cold. The atmosphere of Mars is also currently far too thin to protect the planet from the ultraviolet radiation from space, which would be more than enough to kill any kind of life that we know of here on Earth. But because of all the exploration we've done throughout the years, along with some of the discoveries we've discussed today, we now know that Mars was not always like this. Mars is just as old as Earth is, which means there's been tons and tons of time for the planet to change. The lake beds we found show that the water was once flowing there, despite that not being the case currently. Astronomers say that there is reason to believe that Mars' atmosphere was once filled with carbon dioxide, which traps heat and in turn would have caused a greenhouse effect and warmed the planet to a temperature more conducive to life. Because of the age of Mars, there would have been millions, if not billions of years where the planet was both warm and wet, which is the perfect combination for emerging life. When the Martian conditions turned cold and nasty, it is possible that this may have led to the extinction of the life that may have once existed, which would have left fossils behind, or just maybe there is still the presence of life just under the surface of the red planet. This is why, while we know advanced civilized aliens aren't walking around on the planet, we have to continue our search. In our number 3 spot today we have potential contamination. With all of our missions to Mars, one thing that is extremely important before the rovers take off on their long journey is decontamination. Any kind of contamination from our planet could greatly skew the results of all of the searches and experiments, so of course there are extreme processes that take place before takeoff. This doesn't mean it hasn't happened though. This is just another reason on the long list of why it is always imperative to remain skeptical. What if we found evidence of life on Mars only to later find out that it came from us? The good news is that it is highly unlikely that any organisms from Earth could survive in that kind of a harsh climate, but we certainly cannot bank on that. In our number 2 spot today we have methane. Okay, we are back on our timeline of Martian discoveries that might point to signs of life. Now we are at a point just a few years ago in 2018 when the Curiosity rover found evidence of the presence of methane in the Martian air. It has been hypothesized from other observations from rovers and orbiters that methane may be present, but Curiosity was the first to give us the evidence we needed. This methane discovery is important because on Earth, methane is considered an indication of life, but it is volatile and doesn't last for very long because it quickly breaks down into other molecules. This of course means that there must be something producing the methane that we've been able to find. We also discovered that the methane on Mars goes up and down, which suggests to scientists that it's being produced by living organisms. This isn't, like everything else on this list, a conclusive finding to prove that life on Mars exists, but it is another reason for us to just continue. In our number 1 spot today we have Perseverance. Okay, we are finally at our most recent exploration with the extremely cool and exciting Perseverance rover, which landed on the planet on February 18th of this year. Perseverance is set to have the largest search for life on the planet that we have ever seen, and this is due to both the past explorations and discoveries as well as technological advancements. I mean, we can now see pictures of Mars in 4K. How wild is that? One of Perseverance's main objectives is to search the Jezero crater. This crater is 28 miles wide and 1,600 feet deep and is located just a bit north of the Martian equator. This crater is obviously huge but very important in our search because it is thought to have once housed a lake that would have dried up around 3.5 billion years ago. This has led it to be basically a perfect spot for the rover to look for ancient signs of life and microorganisms that may have once lived in the water. Not only will Perseverance conduct its own experiments, but it will also store samples of rocks for its future return mission to Earth. While this hasn't yet provided us with any signs that may point to life, the potential future findings are very exciting.
Number 10. Alien doorway. So obviously we know that no people have actually landed on Mars and had a look around, at least that we know of. So the majority of this list is from things seen on Mars rover photos, and some of them aren't actually scary and are more like just hilarious or conspiratorial, but give me a break, I've had a long day, okay. The first image on this list comes from May of this year from the Curiosity rover. The image appears to show an entrance hidden into the side of some Martian rocks. Many people started theorizing that this could have been some sort of door to a hidden alien building underground. The perfect shaping of the hole led many people to believe that it must be something man-made or even alien-made. The naysayers decided that it was caused by a rock breaking off due to an earthquake, but what kind of rock would break off and just leave like a perfect hole like that? So I'm gonna go with aliens. Number 9. The hole. Speaking of holes, in 2017 the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter took a picture that revealed a massive unexplained hole on the surface of the red planet. The orbiter has been going around the planet for the past 16 years and sends photos of the planet back for NASA to analyze, and this one definitely caught them off guard. Mars is covered in various different holes and indentations, but this massive pit really stood out against the rest of the planet's landscape. In real size, the hole is hundreds of meters in diameter and appears to have ice at the bottom of it. The surrounding ground apparently covered in patches of frozen carbon dioxide. NASA really had no explanation for how this hole occurred, and they put a team together to try and work out what might have caused it. But don't worry NASA, you don't need a team, because I am a self-titled extraterrestrial professional, and I say that it's a pool that aliens use for alien Olympic swimming competitions. Number 8. Morse code. This same orbiter sent back another interesting picture of the surface the year before in 2016. This time the surface seemed to be trying to send us a message. The marks on the ground appeared to form dashes and dots which formed into a Morse code message. The long markings in the soil were on the inside of an impact crater in an area known as the Hagel Dune Field. Many people started theorizing that this could potentially be a massive sign that aliens live on Mars and are trying to communicate by what could effectively be compared to a massive SOS sign on a beach. I don't know when I decided I was going to make this video all about aliens, but there's really no going back now. So what are they trying to say to us? What message could be so important that they had to carve it into the side of a planet? Okay, it doesn't make much sense to us. This is clearly communication in a Martian language that we just don't know yet. Number 7. Martian face. In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 spacecraft was circling around Mars and taking photos of the surface in an attempt to find a good spot to land for its sister ship, the Viking 2. During its journey, they managed to photograph what appears to be a massive Martian face sticking out of the side of the planet, almost 2 miles long from end to end. It's in a region of the planet that is called Cydonia, and until now I didn't even know that the regions on Mars had names. Scientists released the photo to the public a few days later, claiming that it was just a rock formation, saying, "A huge rock formation which resembles a human head, formed by shadows giving the illusion of eyes, nose, and mouth." But that's just what they want you to think. My degree in alienology tells me that this is actually a Martian equivalent of the Maui statues, clearly a recreation of the aliens that reside on the planet. Number 6. Floating spoon. In 2015, the Mars Curiosity rover picked up another interesting and potentially alien thing amidst the rocks and dust. On August 30th, 2015, on the rover's 1089th day on Mars, it photographed what appears to be a massive floating spoon, a large handle shape extending from the rocks and ending in what appears to resemble a curved end of a spoon. NASA, of course, wants us to think that this spoon formation was caused by the wind breaking away at the rocks and leaving this shape behind. But I am here to tell you that this is actually the remnants of a Martian kitchen. Me and the other people on obscure internet forums are looking forward to the day that we find the fork and knife to complete the full set. And maybe the massive unexplained Mars hole is actually just a big plate. Number 5. Ghost. On this channel, we often look at blurry images that appear to show some kind of ghost or demon lurking in the background. But this one is a bit different than those because this one, of course, comes from Mars, so there's a bit more of a valid excuse for the image to not be of the best quality. This black and white image from the Mars rover appears to show another barren landscape of rocks and dust. Pretty typical for Mars, it honestly seems like kind of a boring place. But near the right corner of the image, you can see what appears to be the figure of a ghostly woman standing on top of one of the large rocks. To me, it looks like she's wearing a dress and, kind of standing with her arm like this or something, and she's got long dark hair. Others online said that the figure reminded them of a weeping angel creature from Doctor Who. No matter what you think, it's pretty creepy to look at and doesn't seem as easily explained away as any of the others. Number 4. Space crab. In 2015, the Mars rover sent back this image of a rocky cliff on the surface of Mars, and like the last, it seems pretty ordinary at a first glance. But when you zoom in to the right side of the image, you can see what appears to be some sort of orange, horrific alien crab spider monster, and it honestly makes my skin itch just looking at it. People online were going crazy and asking NASA to send some sort of mission out to try and figure out what this creature is, because you can tell there's nothing else that even resembles it in the surrounding area or in other photos we've seen of the planet. One scientist brushed it off, saying that they see images like this about once a week. And all I have to say, are there really that many spider space crabs on Mars they see them once a week? Like the last one, NASA doesn't seem to offer up any sort of quick explanation, instead just saying, there's no crab, you're crazy. Well, NASA, you may be correct, but if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Number 3. Dust devils. Alright, let's take a quick break from the crazy and talk about something that has been scientifically explained, but is still just a horrifying concept that I hope I never have to personally experience. This image of a Mars landscape taken in 2016 reveals what appears to be a long vertical column. This is actually known as a Martian dust devil. These occur on Earth as well, but they're usually pretty short-lived and harmless. They're caused when the wind creates what is basically a small little tornado of dirt and sand, but the ones on Mars are a whole lot scarier. They're estimated to be able to grow to the size of about 10 times the size of an average Earth tornado and spin around at about 70 miles per hour, or 112 kilometers per hour for us Canadians. While the winds apparently wouldn't bother you that much, the sand hitting you in the face and tearing apart your spacesuit would be a pretty big issue. Oh, and also you'll probably be struck by a bunch of miniature lightning bolts too. Number 2. Alien fungus. Alright, right back into the crazy. This image was taken by the Mars rover Opportunity in the year 2014, and just like most of the Mars photos we've seen, it's a bunch of rocks and dust. But wait, there's more. People noticed in the bottom left and middle of this image that there appears to be some sort of a more brightly colored object. It's dark red in the middle and white along the outside, which led people to start nicknaming it the Mars Jelly Donut. Theorists took to the internet to share their own opinions about what they believe the suddenly appearing formation to be. It is of course an alien fungus that somehow managed to grow on the surface of Mars. The truth of the situation that NASA shared is that it's apparently two pieces of a rock that the Mars rover drove over top of and managed to split in two. One of the pieces rolling down the hill to where it rests in the bottom left of the image. Number 1. Barack Obama. Ex-United States President Barack Obama is a Martian and actually lives on Mars. Of course. This panoramic image was taken from the summit of a place on Mars called Husband Hill and was snapped back in 2005 by NASA's Spirit rover. The picture was taken over the course of 3 days to provide, quote, a level of clarity that is unequaled in the history of Mars exploration. This high level of clarity allowed us to see the truth of what's hiding on Mars. People pointed out the fact that there was a rock that seemed to be in the exact shape of Barack Obama's head. At first glance, I really really didn't see it, but once you look at it for longer, it really becomes uncanny. Obama has previously said in interviews that he would really like to see humans fly out and live on Mars, so here's my theory. He traveled back in time, taking a space rocket with him, went to Mars, became king of Mars where they built a statue of him, and years later NASA took a picture of the eroded statue in 2005, which I believe is definitely the easiest explanation.
You ever been to Mars?
In my brain I have, in my dreams I have.
I heard there's some pretty terrifying things going on.
Well, I mean, hey, there's a reason why in the 50s Martians were always talked about as like the scariest threat to humanity, so
Yeah.
maybe they had something.
Maybe. Let's find out what.
So what color is Mars? Well, everything is, brownish, orangish, kind of gray, right? Well, that's what we thought until very recently when a bright white rock was spotted on the red planet. NASA's Perseverance rover recently made a pretty intriguing discovery on Mars, a 14-inch high boulder dubbed Ataco Point. Ataco Point stands out not only because of its size, but also, just look at it. It measures 18 inches wide and has a light toned surface speckled with minerals identified as pyroxene and feldspar. It has an unusual size, shape, and arrangement of mineral grains and crystals. It's unlike any of the rocks that surround it. Scientists are debating the origins of Ataco Point. Some think it may have formed outside the area it's sitting in and was transported there by ancient water flows, but of course, we're all kind of hoping the rock just isn't even from Mars originally. As to who brought it there, that's the fun part.
Next up, we have Morse code. Well, not actually Morse code, but also maybe. I'm talking about the Hagel Dune field, located below the North Pole of Mars, discovered in February of 2016. What's cool about these dunes is that they make no sense, unless of course someone or something created them. While the dashes, or lines, in the dunes are pretty standard, created by winds blowing against each other from opposite directions to create a rise in the loose earth forming the dash dune, the dots are incredibly peculiar because generally formations like this only appear when something or someone has interrupted the formation of the linear dunes, begging the question, what could have possibly interrupted the formation? The answer is certainly something to look forward to, although I've already got a pretty good guess. Also, if you do read Morse code and there is actually something written within these many dots and dash dunes, let me know what it says down below.
NASA is pretty excited about a hole that was recently discovered on Mars. Now, a hole may not sound all that exciting at first, but the thing is, who knows what could be down there? And potential caves on Mars would be a huge asset for future crewed missions. We could set up bases below ground. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured an image on August 15th of 2022. It was a small pit on the surface near the Arsia Mons volcano. The pit is just a few meters across, but we don't know how deep it is. There have been other pits spotted near Mars volcanoes, and these pits could be entrances to larger underground caverns. With Mars's thin atmosphere unable to shield against space radiation like Earth's, underground caverns would provide shelter for astronauts. And of course, there's the potential for life. On Earth, we have what are called karsts, which form when limestone dissolves, creating networks of caves and sinkholes underground. If Martian pits are anything like karsts, they could have been warm, sheltered places that supported life a long time ago.
Next up, we have the discovery of Mars's 4 seasons, and I'm not talking about the hotel. 4 very uneven seasons, that is, the length of which change depending on where you're located on the red planet. Alright, let's break it down. 1 year on Mars is made up of 668.59 Martian solar days, which equal about 687 Earth days. Basically, making it through 1 year on Mars is the same as making it through almost 2 on Earth. In the northern hemisphere of the planet Mars, spring lasts for 7 Earth months, summer for 6, fall for 5.3, and winter for just over 4. Of course, even with it being summer, the northern hemisphere of Mars never really reaches temperatures exceeding -20 degrees Celsius. In the southern hemisphere, however, things are a bit different. Summers are hot and quick, while winters are drawn out and cold. extremely cold. The extreme contrast between the two hemispheres is what causes those massive dust storms you see on Mars. Not necessarily terrifying, but probably pretty scary to witness up close and be a part of. And also, we need to know this stuff if we're planning on moving there someday.
Scientists have been trying to figure out why there are methane spikes on Mars. Methane is a gas that on Earth is mostly produced by living organisms like plants, animals, and microbes. It can also come from geological processes like the interaction of water with certain types of rock. So finding methane on Mars raises a big question. Is it being made by some form of life, or is it just a chemical reaction happening underground? NASA's Curiosity rover first detected methane spikes back in 2013. The methane levels increased in a short period before dropping back down. This was really surprising because methane doesn't last long in Mars's thin atmosphere. Sunlight and chemical reactions break it down within a few hundred years, so whatever is producing this methane has to be active right now. One theory is that the methane is being released from underground reservoirs. These could be pockets of methane trapped in ice, released in the gas during warmer seasons, or it could be getting released because of underground activity. There could also be microbes like the ones that live in extreme environments here on Earth, but we still don't have a definitive answer. And that's pretty cool.
Next up, we have a discovery made in 2015 that has caused NASA scientists to question everything. Okay, well, not everything, but definitely some stuff. You see, while exploring the desert-like surface of Mars, the Curiosity rover just so happened to stumble upon Maria's Pass, a geological contact zone where two different rocks make contact. In this case, a layer of sandstone sits atop a bed of mudstone. In the area, there is also a large concentration of silica, which is quite common on Earth as it's found in rocks and minerals, primarily quartz, as well as glass, sand, silicone, and granite. What's interesting, however, is the fact that in order for such a large concentration of silica to occur, water must be present, and so uncovering this pass filled with a high concentration of silica is a major step in understanding what Mars would have looked like at a time when its waters were free-flowing. And then of course there's a matter of tridymite, which was also discovered on the pass. Like silica, tridymite does exist on Earth, but unlike silica, tridymite is incredibly rare. Unlike Earth, however, Mars has an abundance of this mineral, leading scientists to wonder why and how. And also, look at this thing, it's so cool.
The soil on Mars is toxic. It's not all bad though. Mars' soil contains perchlorate salts, chemicals that are really good at absorbing water, and they've been found all over the Martian surface. Scientists first discovered them thanks to the Phoenix Mars lander in 2008. These salts can lower the freezing point of water. This means that even in the super cold temperatures on Mars, perchlorates could help keep water in a liquid state. So finding these salts means there might be briny water just below the surface, which also means there's a chance there could be life on the red planet. But perchlorates are also toxic to most forms of life. On Earth, they can disrupt thyroid function in humans and are harmful to a lot of plants and animals. Who knows what kind of life could exist up there that could handle the stuff though. Plus, another interesting aspect of these salts is that they release oxygen when heated. This could be incredibly useful for future manned missions to Mars. We could have a way of generating oxygen for breathing and fuel.
Next up, volcanoes. Ancient volcanoes that once existed proudly on Mars in all of their active glory, but that are now buried deep beneath the surface of the planet. Not only that, but it is believed that these newly discovered volcanoes once erupted from underneath the surface of the ice. When this happened, it was not uncommon for the eruption to punch a hole clear through the ice layer, concealing the volcano, and deposit large amounts of ash into the air, leaving behind a distinct trail of minerals and other compounds. Minerals like tridymite, which support scientists' theory as its large quantities on Mars point to heavy volcanic history in Mars. Imagine owning a crystal that formed as the result of a volcanic eruption on Mars. I feel like that's when you know you've truly made it. Either that or that's when you know that we screwed up our own planet so bad that we had to evacuate and now we're just surrounded by the crystal because we live on Mars. Like I said, either or.
In 2012, all these strange cloud-like plumes were spotted by amateur astronomers shooting up from the surface. So what is going on here? Scientists have a few theories, but none of them are 100% definitive. One is that these plumes could be related to some sort of volcanic activity, even though Mars's known volcanoes are believed to be now inactive. Another possibility is that they're caused by solar wind interacting with the Martian atmosphere, creating this kind of aurora-like phenomenon, but these plumes are incredibly high, much higher than what we'd expect from interactions like that. The plumes could also be related to dust storms. Mars is famous for its dust storms, some of which can envelop the entire planet. These storms could potentially be kicking up dust high into the atmosphere, creating the plume-like formations. But again, the altitude of the plumes is much higher than what we'd see with typical dust storms.
Alright you guys, this last one isn't so much of a discovery made by the Mars rover as it is a theory put forth by all of you. Well, not all of you, but some of you for sure. Anyways, it goes like this. Is it at all possible, given the nature of Mars's past, flowing oceans, four seasons, volcanoes, gravity, and familiar minerals and compounds, that at one point we already lived there? I mean, think about it. Maybe at one point humans inhabited Mars, but then we messed it up so bad that we had to come to Earth. And then the asteroid hit that killed the dinosaurs, we get sent back to the Dark Ages, and now here we are trying to do it all over again, only opposite. I mean, based off of our research, Mars was clearly more inhabitable back then than it is now. And you can also apparently grow crops on Mars. So while the theory is out there, so is Mars, and maybe so were we at one point. You never know.
Starting off this countdown, we have the butt crack rock. This has to be the funniest thing found on Mars. But basically, in February of 2021, NASA's Perseverance rover was on the planet taking photos. That's when it took a photo of a plump rock with a crack running down it. And immediately people started making jokes saying that the rock looks like a big old butt crack. In fact, it started when software engineer Kevin Gill saw the rock, tweeted a picture of it, and called it the butt crack rock. From there, it kind of just, snowballed. Glad to see though that people still have a good sense of humor. For that alone, this man deserves a raise. Like, not all heroes wear capes. In our 9th spot today, we have the giant spoon. Don't worry, when Elon Musk sends us to Mars, you won't have to pack your cutlery. Why? Well, Mars has a number of giant spoons. Let me explain. In 2015, Mars's Curiosity rover discovered what appeared to be a large floating spoon on Mars. Later on, they found another spoon, but this time it wasn't floating and it was much smaller. Unfortunately, it's not actually a spoon, but just rocks that happen to look eerily exactly like one. Either way, it's still pretty weird. Coming in at number 8, we have the blueberries. And no, the tiny small blue fruit were not found on Mars. Blueberries is the name given to these tiny little spheres found on Mars. In 2004, the Mars Opportunity rover spotted these small spheres near the Fram crater. They are about 1 to 2 inches across, so they're about the size of actual blueberries. On top of that, they do have a blue hue to them. Now, these things are weird for a number of reasons. One, the blueberries found within the soil are smaller than the ones found in the outcrops. Why? We don't know. And 2, the size of the blueberries also decrease with decreasing latitude. Why? Again, we don't know. They also don't have any idea what caused them to form these perfect round spheres. Obviously, they have some theories, but they have never been proven. In our 7th spot today, we have the collection of spheres. Now, don't be fooled, these are different than the little blueberry spheres that I just finished talking about. These were discovered in 2012 at an outcrop named Kirkwood. Basically, they look like a bunch of blister-like bumps on the ground. These are even more mysterious than the blueberries though. In fact, rover mission principal investigator Steve Squires said, and I quote, "This is one of the most extraordinary pictures from the whole mission. Kirkwood is chock full of a dense accumulation of these small spherical objects." Of course, we immediately thought of the blueberries, but this is something different. We never have seen such a dense accumulation of spherules in a rock outcrop on Mars. And again, they don't know what these are or what caused their formation. According to NASA, these spheres are different than the blueberries in a number of ways. They differ in concentration, distribution, and structure. That's why they call this collection so puzzling. Moving on to number 6, we have the meteorite. On January 6, 2005, the Opportunity rover found a basketball-sized meteorite on Mars. This is said to be the first meteorite ever discovered on another planet. Upon further investigation, they found that the meteorite was composed of iron and nickel. Now, here's the thing. This find was alarming for a number of reasons. One, according to Steve Squires, and I quote, Mars should be hit by a lot more rocky meteorites than iron meteorites. Continuing on, he said, "We haven't really thought much about meteorites until now, but this discovery has really opened our eyes to the question. It was a huge surprise. Even NASA workers were baffled by this finding, and now they're doing more investigation on Mars and meteorites. In the end, this can help us learn more about space." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the plastic. It's bad enough that we have already polluted one planet with plastic and garbage, but it looks like we're already starting to pollute another as well. So when the Curiosity rover first landed on Mars, they found a piece of plastic on the surface and were like, what the hell? It literally confused NASA. They were like, nah, this can't be plastic wrap, but it was. And the explanation on how it got there is pretty lame, sorry. And it's not really a mysterious one. But basically the plastic came from the rover itself. A piece of wrap from a cable came loose during landing. But like I said before, let's not pollute another planet. Plastic definitely does not belong on another planet or in space at all, for that fact. Coming in at number 4, we have the face on Mars. Now this is probably the creepiest thing ever found on Mars. It was discovered in 1976 when NASA's Viking 1 orbiter flew by Mars. It was taking photos and managed to take a photo of what appears to be a face on Mars. Like, it straight up has 2 evil dark eyes, a nose, and a mouth. People think that maybe this is an alien-built monument on Mars to worship an alien god. But of course, NASA just says it naturally formed due to erosion. Either way, it's hella creepy. Coming in at number 3, we have the thigh bone. This one is another pretty creepy one, not gonna lie. Back in 2014, NASA's Curiosity rover sent back multiple photos to Earth. In one of the photos, there seemed to be something sticking out of a collection of rocks, half buried in the dust. Zooming in, it looks like a freaking femur bone from a human thigh, which is scary for a number of reasons. 1, why is there a human bone on Mars? Number 2, what happened to the person that the bone belonged to? Then people were like, whoa, what if it's an alien bone? Especially since it's more crooked than straight like a human femur is. So people were like, yeah, that has to be from an alien. Well, it turns out that upon further investigation, the bone is none other than a rock, not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, get it? Scientists claim that the shape was created through erosion by wind or water. I know, very anticlimactic, but that doesn't stop people from thinking it's still a real bone. I mean, for all we know, NASA could be lying to us, just saying. Moving on to number 2, we have the ancient god. In 2015, NASA's Mars Opportunity rover took this picture. It was then uploaded on the Mars's exploration website. Upon closer inspection, people thought that one of the rocks in the photo had a weird design carved into it. In fact, they claimed that it looked like an ancient god's head. I mean, I can see it. The rock has a full-on wavy beard and everything. To UFO enthusiasts, this was more evidence that aliens live on Mars and are carving sculptures and busts of people that they worship. And in our number 1 spot, we have the person. In 2007, people went nuts when the Spirit rover snapped this eerie photo on the planet. It appears to be a human-like figure perched up on a rock. NASA immediately denied this and said, it's just a rock, people, calm down. But that didn't stop UFO enthusiasts. They believe that this rock is actually a statue of a female figure made by aliens. Maybe this is a god that the aliens bow down to. Not gonna lie, it eerily does look like a female. And that's not the only time a person has been spotted on Mars. They also captured this image as well, which literally looks like an eerie, ghostly woman walking on Mars. Like, that one is too creepy. Like, you can't look at that and tell me it's just a rock. I don't believe it. Nice try, NASA.